Welcome to the 13th tutorial of my Tableau Server Client series. This series is dedicated to showcasing how to use Tableau Server Client to automate various tasks. In this video, I will walk you through how to run flows published to your Tableau server using Tableau Server Client. Before jumping into the scripts, allow me to explain why triggering flows via Python scripts might be advantageous. You may be immediately thinking, why do I need to understand how to use Tableau Server Client to trigger flows on my Tableau server when I already have Prep Conductor to schedule and execute flows? Well, Tableau Server Client allows you to do the following. It allows you to embed the logic for running your flows into other data orchestration tools like Oracle Data Integrator and Airflow. It allows for more robust conditional execution options. For example, suppose your Tableau Prep flow connects to your company's data lake and you want the flow to run after the upstream job responsible for populating or updating the data lake source is completed. By embedding the Python script into another orchestrator and process, you can ensure that that is the case. Your prep flow will no longer run on a schedule managed by your Tableau server, and the process for running flows becomes more intelligent because the prep flow will only run when the source has been populated or updated. Tableau Prep can currently do the same when working with published data sources, but has no knowledge of the processes existing outside of it. Tableau Server Client also allows you to schedule and run flows more frequently than the available frequency on Tableau Server and Tableau Cloud. Currently, you can run a flow every 15 minutes on Tableau Server, and on Tableau Cloud, that's going to be hourly. This could be useful if your data is available in real or near real time, and you would like to use an extract instead of a live connection. You get the best of both worlds, the power of Tableau's hyper technology, and data as up to date as the speed for which your flow can run. Having briefly touched on a couple of benefits, let's continue by jumping into Visual Studio Code to develop a script that will allow us to trigger a Tableau Prep flow maintained on my Tableau server. Okay, to get started, we're going to run this initial configuration/setup block. This is the same block you've seen throughout every tutorial so far, starting with querying your server for the first time. That's tutorial 2. If you're not familiar with this process, you might want to watch that tutorial before continuing on with this one. In any event, what I'll do is I'll just briefly explain what's going on here. So we have a authentication object here, and this is composed of 3 parameters. So we have our token name, in my case it's TSM, Tableau Server Management. We have a token value, that's going to be your personal access token that you generate on the front end of your Tableau server. I'm using keyring here to store and retrieve my personal access token. But for you, what that's going to look like, it's going to look like this. So if I go to my Tableau server and I go to my account settings, and then I scroll down to my personal access tokens, you'll see that I have a personal access token named TSM. For you, you're going to type in a token name and then you're going to click create token. As soon as you click create token, it's going to return a actual token value that you can copy and paste and run within your script. So going back to Visual Studio, you'd be putting that token value in here as opposed to using keyring, unless you want to use keyring. And in that case, you'd be storing that in the keyring. Okay, so I also have a site ID. These 3 variables are used as parameters, so I'm passing those into the authentication object, so token name, token value, and site ID. And I'm going to go ahead and run this. Okay. So this next block, again, we're going to use our Tableau authentication object to sign into our server. Let's just run it to make sure it works. And it does. Okay, in this video, we're trying to trigger a single flow. In previous videos on generating reports, I showcased how to access specific endpoints to retrieve a list of objects corresponding to that endpoint. For example, if we think about the flows, so if I say, gather all flows, we would do something like this. We would have done flow for flow and tsc.pager server.flows. This is what we've done previously. So this is going to use list comprehension to access the flows endpoint, and we're going to generate a list of flow objects for all flows that are on my server. So if I run this, this is going to get all of the flows. And let's just take a look at that list. So we have a list of flow objects, and then how many do we have? We have 4 flows. Let's take a look at the first one. So this is just going to show us the attributes that are maintained for a flow object. So this flow here is a specific flow. So it's flow 1, or at index 0 in our list of flow objects that we returned or retrieved using the flows endpoint. That flow's name is Superstore Flow, and this is going to be the flow that we're actually going to trigger today in this demo. Now, if I want to trigger just this flow, there are a few ways I could go about doing this. I could first determine, okay, which flow do I want out of the list of all flows on my server, and then say something like flow is equal to flows 0, right? So in this case, this would gather, this would store that Superstore Flow object in this variable, right? So I would reference that or point to the first flow in this list of flows, and that would be the Superstore Flow. That's one we want to trigger. But another way of doing this, and this is going to be useful if you have hundreds or thousands of flows on your server, you don't really want to generate the list of flow objects if you only need one. So what I would suggest doing is using the request options objects that are available to you. So let's just do create a filter for the request. And what this filter is going to be is it's going to be the filter that's going to be applied to your request on the flows endpoint for a particular flow that you want. In this case, we want Superstore Flow, right? So what I can do is I can say request options. So we're going to generate or create the request options object, and that's going to be equal to tsc.requestOptions. So we have our request options object here. What we're going to do is we're going to add a filter to this. So let me do a little typing exercise here. So I'm going to add my filter. What type of filter do I want? In the documentation, you can see the type of criteria that you can implement. So you can, with these request options objects, you can define filtering and sorting criteria for your requests whenever you're accessing particular endpoints. In this case, we want to just get the Superstore Flow. So what I want to do is I want to use tsc.requestOptions.field.name. And what this is saying is I want to filter on the field name, so the name value for the particular flow, in that case, Superstore Flow. Now, what type of operator do I want to use? I want to use an equals operator. So I'm going to say tsc request options dot operator dot equals. And then what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for a flow that has a name value of Superstore Flow. And be conscious that this value needs to be character for character identical to what you're typing in here, right? So case sensitivity, you need to be on the lookout for that. So make sure you type this in character for character as you see it here or on the front end of your server. So let's type Superstore Flow. And then this is going to be our request options object that we're going to pass into our request on the flows endpoint. So what we can do is we can move on. We can say get the flow specified in the request filter. And to do this, we're going to just say flow is equal to server.flows.get. And we're going to use the get method to retrieve a specific flow. Previously, we would use paginate, right? We'd use tsc.pager to create a pagination object that's going to allow us to get all of the flows on our server. Here we want just one. And we've specified which one we want using this. So this is going to be a flow item or object that we're trying to get from our server. And we're going to want to, I'll show you the structure of this, this request here in a moment. So as soon as I run this, we're going to be able to see what is flow, right? So it's server.flows.get. Use the request options to get a flow named Superstore Flow, and then access this portion of that structure returned. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at flow. And this is our flow, right? So our flow, it's a single flow, the Superstore Flow, and you're going to notice that it looks exactly like what we saw previously, right? So this is the dictionary representation of the attributes maintained for that flow. We see Superstore Flow, and this is going to allow us to say, hey, server, run this particular flow. So we have the flow item that we're going to run. And now to trigger this, what we're going to do, I'm just going to say trigger the flow to run. What we can do is we can say server.flows.refresh. So we're going to use the refresh method, and we're going to pass in that flow item. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this and showcase that this actually works. And then we're going to continue along a path that's going to allow us to update this code to where we're going to trigger the flow. And then we're going to implement a method for polling our server for a response. Did the flow run? Did it fail? Give us those details. Because what you'd want to do is you may want to actually use that information to trigger another flow or some other action downstream, instead of having to monitor your Tableau server every time you run this, right, for an outcome. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And then let's jump over to my site. So we're going to go back to my Tableau server, and then we're going to go to that flow. So let's go to Explore. Let's go to Samples. Let's go to Superstore Flow. And you'll see that it's running now. So the moment we executed that script, it started to run. So it triggered the flow programmatically, and it's running. So we're going to see it succeeded 4 and 5 seconds, and we're good. So we successfully triggered our flow programmatically using Python and Tableau Server Client. Now, again, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be in a situation where we have to go and then check the front end like I just did. I want to pull the server, so the job that's executing in the background, and I want to every now and then check to see, is there a response yet, right? Is it pending, is it in progress, or has it been completed, or has it failed with some error? So what we can do here is let's go back to Visual Studio Code, and we're just going to update this. All right, and that update we're going to make is we're going to turn this from a simple call to the flows endpoint to say, hey, refresh this flow, to a job. We're going to turn this into a job item. So we're going to say job is equal to server.flows.refresh flow. We're going to say trigger the flow and wait for response. That's the goal here, is we want to monitor the response, whether it fails or succeeds. If it fails, we want to print out a response that says, hey, the job failed. If it succeeds, let's print out the job details to the user. To do that, we're going to say, I'm just going to go ahead and print, say the job is in progress. So I'm going to say print, use an F string, I'm going to say job, and then I'm going to say job ID, job.id is running. Okay. The next step we're going to do is we're going to use a try except else block to say, hey, try doing this. If an exception is raised, print a response of job failed, because if any exception is caught when the job is running, the job is ultimately going to fail. It doesn't matter what it is. So we can use a bare except in this case. The else block is going to be responsible for printing out the response when there is no exception raised. So that means the job has completed successfully. So let's go ahead and do that now. Say job is equal to server.jobs.wait for job. So this is going to be the polling process, right? Let's continuously request that the server tells us, did it complete successfully? Or did it fail? Was there an exception? Is it in progress? And whatnot. Say accept. We're going to say response is equal to job failed. We'll print that response. Else. And this is going to be the part where we just make a prettified block of text to tell the user the details of the successful execution of this flow or job. So I'm going to say job finished successfully. And let's just do a few new lines. And then we'll say job details. Do another new line. And then we're going to now say, okay, what was the job that was running and that completed successfully? What was the name of the flow corresponding to that job? The time the job was created, the time it started, and the time the job completed. So the job create time and start time will not always be identical, and that's because there may be some latency between the time for which you run the script and the job is created to when it actually starts running. And that could be because you have maybe 10 other flows running on your backgrounders that are taking up your resources, and you can't run an 11th flow at that time. You have to wait for some jobs to finish, something like that. There could be some latency. So we're going to go ahead and keep both of those key pieces of information in this output. So I'm going to say job ID, use an F string, I'm going to say job ID, and then let's pass in that job ID again, job.id. And let's go ahead and do another new line. I'm going to say flow name. And then do another new line again. And then we'll say the job created time. And after this one, I'm just going to copy and paste some things so that this is easier and you're not sitting here watching me do a typing exercise. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this twice and then populate it with the attributes that we're actually going to display to the user. So I'm going to say job created time, job start time, job end time. And this is going to be started at, and this will be completed at. So those are the names of the attributes corresponding to a job item. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to print out this response. So if it completes successfully, we're going to print out this block of text that tells the user, hey, the job completed successfully. Here are the details. Let's go ahead and try it. All right, so the job is running. We know the job has been created. It's going to be running. And now what we're going to do here is let's just go ahead and wait here a moment. So right now I'm on a developer program instance of Tableau Cloud. Normally, if you're on a production instance, so you're working, you're on the job and you're working with your company's instance of Tableau Cloud or Tableau Server, what you're going to see is this is going to go a lot faster. I just don't have the backgrounders allocated to a developer program instance. So what's happening right now is this job is probably sitting in pending, and we can actually check that right now. So if I just go back to my server, let's see what's going on here. Let's see what the server is saying. Okay, it's pending run, right? So it's sitting in a queue. And what we'll do is we'll monitor here for a moment, wait for it to start running. And as soon as it starts actually running, so the job actually kicks off. So the job's been created, it's sitting in a queue. We're eventually going to see that the job starts, and here it's starting, it's in progress. And then as soon as it ends, what we'll do is we'll just jump back to Visual Studio Code. So as soon as I see the duration populated, we'll jump back into Visual Studio Code. Okay, so it completed successfully, 6 seconds each for each output node. Let's jump back to Visual Studio Code and see what the response that was printed. Okay, so it finished successfully. The job details, here's the ID of the job if you ever wanted to look up the corresponding details of that job. The flow name, so the name of the flow that was executed. The date the job was created, so when did we run the script. The date the job actually started. And then the end time for the job. All right, so what we can do, if you absolutely wanted to see that, hey, these details were populated for that actual job, what we can do is say job._dict and look at it. All right, so we see the flow completed successfully. We have a created that timestamp, so we have a date time object. We have a started timestamp, we completed that timestamp. And yeah, here are the details of that particular job. We have successfully triggered a flow to run programmatically to Python and Tableau Server Client on your server. We have used the jobs endpoint to wait for the job. So we're going to just ask the server, hey, keep us updated on the progress of this job. Is it in progress? Is it completed? Or did it fail? And then we printed out the corresponding response. So we've said if there was an exception raised, we said the job failed because any exception raised for any of these jobs is going to result in the job failing. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If it succeeds, we're going to print out this nice, pretty response that you can do other things with this, right? You could actually make this some more conditional execution, right? You could say, hey, if this succeeds, tell this other system or process to execute this other flow or do something else, right? It could be completely independent of Tableau Server, right? It could be some other process you want to kick off that's not related to Tableau Server as a result of this job running successfully. Yeah, and we just print out the response, and this is one way you can trigger a flow on your Tableau Server programmatically. That's going to wrap up this tutorial on triggering flows programmatically through Tableau Server Clients. I hope you found this tutorial useful and can use the concepts I've covered to level up your ability to manage your own Tableau server through automation.
If you enjoyed this video, then please like the video and subscribe to my channel for notifications on future videos. Thank you again, and see you next time.